Osama bin Laden, the man who ordered the attack on America. 9/11, the trauma of New York. For 10 years, the USA hunts down its public enemy number one and finds him where no one suspects him. He is killed in Abbottabad, Pakistan on May 2nd, 2011. Private papers fall into the Americans' hands during the operation. Some of them are published later online. They offer a glimpse into Osama bin Laden's life in his hideout. How he felt and what he thought. How he loved and hated. Osama bin Laden, up close and personal. Abbottabad, Pakistan, a city of 500,000 at the foot of the Himalayas. Abbottabad benefits from a mountain climate and cool summers. June marks the beginning of the season. Affluent Pakistanis from the hot southern regions enjoy the summertime freshness here. And Abbottabad is safe. After all, the Pakistani Army's military academy is based here. Good private and boarding schools equally thrive in this kind of environment. By Pakistani standards, a pleasantly calm atmosphere pervades the city. The district of Bilal Town is not the most upscale neighborhood. Despite that, larger solitary compounds dot the area in an otherwise rural environment. None of the residents suspect that one of these compounds houses a man who is wanted all around the world, Osama bin Laden. He once spread fear and terror into the Western world. In his house in Abbottabad, a TV links him to the outside world. Occasionally in newscasts, he sees himself, the man whom many regard as the world's most dangerous terrorist. For the Americans looking for him, he has vanished into thin air. In his hideout, he views the videotapes displaying, in his opinion, his greatest triumph again and again. September 11th, 2001, the attacks on the World Trade Center in New York, which killed almost 3,000 people. Roughly 10 years later, bin Laden wants to publicly savor his terrible triumph one more time. In his compound, he writes to a confidant.
We are awaiting the 10th anniversary of the blessed attack on New York and Washington. You are well aware of the importance of taking advantage of the anniversary in the media. We have a lot to show. If Al Jazeera shows responsiveness, we should tell them that we are willing to cooperate. Tell them that we suggest that they make a documentary on this anniversary, and we will provide them with printed, audio, and video material. We should also look for an American channel that can be close to being unbiased.
Original quotes from bin Laden himself, according to the US government. It has posted 103 documents on a website, materials seized in Abbottabad in 2011, mostly on hard drives. Though bin Laden is very outspoken in these documents, still, they don't reveal how he came across face to face. British journalist Peter Bergen experienced this firsthand.
I met bin Laden in 1997 in eastern Afghanistan. It was his first television interview. You know, he came across as serious, well-informed, very low-key. You know, he was not sort of, I didn't know what to expect. I thought, you know, was he going to be thumping the table and shouting? He wasn't. He was very even.
On September 11th, 2001, Osama bin Laden humiliates the global power, USA. That same day, he's in a cave in Afghanistan. Sitting among his followers, he keeps count as the hijacked planes hurtle into their targets, one after the other. This is the day when he becomes the most well-known terrorist in the world and the most wanted. It wasn't something handed down to him. Osama bin Laden was born in 1957 in Saudi Arabia, a country marked by old traditions and rapid change. Oil makes the desert nation rich, but big money brings the modern era with it. Consumption and decadence start to compete with the Bedouins' simple life. Osama bin Laden is not among the losers in this change. He is one of 54 children sired by Mohammed bin Laden, a developer who became extremely wealthy as a result of Saudi Arabia's construction boom. A widely branched family, the bin Ladens gain ever greater prestige and influence.
It was really quite an organized clan, and under Islamic inheritance law, Osama would have known as a recognized son of Mohammed bin Laden that he would have a significant fortune after his father died.
Like many Saudis of his generation, young Osama loves some of the novelties. Cars are his passion. He enjoys playing soccer, too. In Jeddah, he attends one of the most modern elite schools in the country. Osama's gym teacher at the Al-Taga Model School comes from Syria, where he was a member of the Islamist Muslim Brotherhood. Now he lives in exile in Saudi Arabia. The teacher deliberately tries to influence young bin Laden's political views.
So Osama had this very distinctive experience in an elite educational setting, influenced by European curricula, but also educated by Syrian Muslim Brotherhood activists who saw Islam as a source of political change, not just personal faith and practice.
Osama bin Laden studies economics and business administration at King Abdulaziz University in Jeddah. But he is drawn to lectures held by Islamic scholars. One of them, Abdullah Yusuf Azam, spurs the faithful on to wage jihad, holy war. Muslim soil must be defended against the hegemony of the infidels. The armed struggle to accomplish this ought to be fought throughout the Islamic world. Afghanistan. Here, jihadists literally go into combat against hostile invaders. Soldiers from the socialist Soviet Union have occupied the country. Firm conviction causes many young Saudis to be drawn into this holy war. Yet a thirst for adventure is there too. As of 1984, Osama bin Laden is one of them. His presence turns him into a celebrity back home. 1990, deployment of US troops in Saudi Arabia. Their mission? To liberate neighboring Kuwait, which has been occupied by the Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein. Bin Laden fears that the presence of US troops in his homeland is an affront to the Muslim world. The holiest sites in Islam, Mecca and Medina, lie in Saudi Arabia. The Russians' withdrawal marks the end of bin Laden's adventure in Afghanistan. The militant fundamentalist looks for a new sphere of activity.
Hat damals auch dem Verteidigungsminister Sultan angeboten, selbst eine freiwillige Armee aufzustellen, sich dann den Irakern entgegenzustellen. Und als der Verteidigungsminister und der König dieses Ansinnen ablehnten, wahrscheinlich auch recht schroff ablehnten, da begab sich Osama bin Laden in die Opposition. Und ab dem Moment scheint er über Wege nachgedacht zu haben, auch mit Gewalt gegen Saudi-Arabien vorzugehen und auch mit Gewalt gegen die auswärtigen Unterstützer des Königreichs vorzugehen, also an erster Stelle die Vereinigten Staaten.
This hatred towards America culminates in the attacks on September 11th, 2001. The Americans strike back. The hunt for bin Laden is on. At first via CIA squads in Afghanistan. But they're unable to catch bin Laden. Even when U.S. armed forces head into the Hindu Kush region in late 2001, the quarry is nowhere to be found. For years, the Americans presumed that bin Laden is hiding in the mountains of Afghanistan or the tribal regions of Pakistan.
The search for bin Laden and the decade that took, I think at times there was a source of an enormous frustration for the intelligence community, if not almost embarrassment, right? How could you have all of these resources, all of these people devoted to this search and turn up so little? There were, in terms of the public investment in this, it waned at times, right? There were other things that were happening. There was the invasion in Iraq and that ugly aftermath of the war in Iraq, the unraveling of that war. I mean, that diverted not only resources from the search for bin Laden, but diverted the public's attention from the search for bin Laden.
Yet since 2005, bin Laden hasn't had to live in mountain villages or caves anymore. In 2004, a Pakistani middleman buys several property lots in a suburb of Abbottabad. He spends $50,000 and applies for a building permit. The client's order calls for a domicile with space for about a dozen residents. In 2005, construction workers erect a house. The neighborhood has been chosen with care.
A large portion of the population in Bilal town are retired people, or semi-retired if you like, those who've taken up some occupation after post-retirement. It's not an active region. It's not where people get up at 6:30 in the morning and start doing things. It's more like a sleepy place where the day starts at about 9 o'clock. And those who get up earlier than that are the exception, not the rule. There's not too much social interaction.
Walls enclose the house, not unusual in a culture that shields women from strangers' eyes. Shaukat Kadir knows the situation in Abbottabad.
The compound is a large one. It was a very large compound. But most houses in most villas in Bilal town have an equal size of compound. It's about 5 canals of land in the local language, which comes to about 2,500 square yards of land. That's not too much either. It's a very large compound, but for most middle-class families in that region, this wouldn't be too large an accommodation. It's not all that expensive either from that point of view.
Bin Laden writes letters, memos, and messages in his hideout. He knows he has to be very careful. There is no internet in the house, no mobile phones either. However, he is not completely isolated here either.
If you don't forget, he had a lot of time on his hands. So he would write 46-page memos to his lieutenants, and then he would put it on a thumb drive and give it to a courier. The couriers were, they were perfect for bin Laden because they were also his bodyguards. They spoke Arabic because they grew up in Kuwait, but they came from this part of Pakistan, so they spoke the local language. So it was, they were able to present themselves as locals because they kind of were.
The couriers relay bin Laden's messages, most of which are stored on USB thumb drives, to intermediaries. The neighbors only know the 2 Pakistani brothers, Arshad and Tariq, nothing about the compound's high-profile resident. Arshad Khan, one of his couriers, systematically shields bin Laden from their view.
One of the things that he shared with his neighbors was that he had an elder uncle staying with him, with his wife and children, and he was not well. So that was the excuse, the other excuse not mixing with people.
You know, they were being very, very careful about security. So if a kid would knock a soccer ball or cricket ball over the wall, the bodyguards inside the compound wouldn't return the ball, wouldn't let the kid in. The bodyguard would come out and give somebody 50 rupees to just go away and, you know, forget about it. They were not letting anybody into the compound.
Bin Laden doesn't live all by himself in the compound. He has gathered part of his family here.
War immer der Auffassung, dass es eine gute Sitte unter Muslimen ist, 4 Frauen zu haben. Und das entspricht auch der gängigen Praxis, zumindest unter den konservativen Muslimen in Saudi-Arabien. Es ist dort gang und gäbe, wenn denn die finanziellen Mittel vorliegen, 2, 3 oder 4 Frauen zu heiraten.
2 of his 4 wives are with him in Abbottabad. 2 of his younger children are even born here. Living in a quasi-conspiracy, this can become a real challenge, as Bin Laden writes in one of his letters.
One of the most important security issues in cities is controlling children by not getting out of the house except for extreme necessity like medical care, and that they do not get to the yard of the house without an adult who will control the volume of their voices.
On the compound, there were a dozen kids, Bin Laden's kids, and then also grandkids.
Only very few photos of these younger children exist.
The 2 educated wives, there was sort of a, you know, almost like a classroom, and they would teach them, and then Bin Laden would come and sort of instruct them about